Hello everyone and welcome back to our pumpkin tutorials. I'm going to show you how to sew your pumpkin piece together to create your pumpkin now. So we're almost done. What you should have, what you need for this bit is your crocheted panel with its nice long yarn tail still attached. You'll need some stuffing, you'll need your cinnamon stick and a needle and scissors. And we're going to start by finding the end of that nice long tail we left. I'm going to thread that onto the needle. Pull that through. So, I've actually left a really long tail on this one, but never mind. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to start. I'm going to come to the point where our yarn finished. I'm just going to flip this over so that you can see, because I want to sew in that direction. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to take your needle and you're going to weave it in and out of these chains all the way along the row. So I usually start from the top and just weave it up and down each of those chain stitches. Maybe once in a while just pull it through. So for now I'll just pull it through. It doesn't need to be tight, just so long as it's in there. And we're going to work all the way along. It doesn't need to be particularly neat. You're not actually going to see this in a moment. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this thread to gather up the top of our pumpkin. Okay, so through again. I'm just going to keep going. So I am going to work across here and I'll meet you back when I get to the end of this row. Okay, so I have finished weaving my thread all the way to the end, and what we're going to do now is we're going to do a gather. So what I like to do is just pull gently and slowly slide your stitches down the thread that you've just woven through. Now you want to do this firmly, but don't pull so hard that you break your yarn, and believe me, that can happen, and hopefully it won't for you. So yeah, you're going to pull this nice and tight, and then holding your pulled in yarn, I like to just put this back through like that, pull it all the way through to almost the end, so you've got a little loop. Keep that nice and tight. It's a bit fiddly. And then I like to just tie a knot, and then you know it's not going to go anywhere, so just hold it really tight, pull that knot tight, and there you have your gathered top. And that is actually going to be the top or bottom of your pumpkin. So if you keep that on the inside out still, you're now going to take your needle and pass it under the beginning of that row, which will be where the gathers start on the other side. Like that. And pull it through. Pull that nice and tight. So now what you have is one gathered bottom or top of your pumpkin, and then you have these two open edges, and then you have a big open space at the bottom. We're going to sew together these two edges. To do that, you can use a few different types of stitches, but I am just going to show you the way that I do it, nice and simple. You can take your needle and just put it through from one side to the other and pull. And then I'd like to go back through from the same side to the other side. So standard sewing. Keep it tight, but not so tight that it bunches up the fabric. And we're going to do that all the way along. And all you want to make sure is when you're putting your needle through this, you're under at least 2 strands of yarn, but not much more, because otherwise you'll end up with a really bulky seam. If you don't do enough strands, if you only do the 1 strand, it can leave a gap when you stuff it. But if you do too many, it can look a bit sort of misshapen. So you just want to make sure you're under 2 at a time on each side. And slowly work up your pumpkin, keeping your stitches fairly close together, because that will make sure you don't end up with any side gaps. So I'm going to carry on doing this now, and I'll meet you back when we're almost at the top of this edge. Okay, so I've just finished seaming up the side of my pumpkin. I haven't tied it in a knot yet though, so you should have something that looks something like this. What I want you to do is do one more stitch. I'm actually going to go around from this side this time. Pull that through, and then all I do is pull that tight, take my strand of yarn that was here, and tie those in a knot. If you haven't got a strand of yarn there, you can just tie your working yarn in a little knot as you work. Okay, so now what you should have is an inside out pumpkin bowl, really, little basket. So what you're going to do now is the same as we did before. We're going to take our needle and weave it through the top chains of your little pumpkin. And weave that all the way through. And you want to go all the way around until you end up back at the beginning. All the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on doing this. I'll meet you back round at the beginning. See you in a minute. And here we are. So I've gone all the way around. If I pull my working yarn, the bag starts to gather. But what I want you to do is make sure that you are nice and wide and open at the top there, because that's going to make it easier to put our filling in. It's now time for us to turn our pumpkin the right way round. So all you do is just fold that, push that bottom through the top, and there you have your right side up pumpkin. So you should be able to see all the front post double crochets that you've done throughout this project on the outside of the pumpkin. Now is the fun bit, we get to stuff it. So all you need to do is get your stuff in, your polyfill, and just keep bumping that in there. And I like to make sure that I really push that down into the bottom curves, and this is where all those increase stitches you did make a real difference to how your pumpkin sits. Keep stuffing that in there. And you want to make sure your pumpkin's nice and full, but not so full that it's pushing these crochets apart and you'll see in the fill in the middle. So I think that might be enough for this one. It needs to be fairly dense, but still enough squish. We'll just pop this bit in. There we go. And I like to just push that all out to the edges so that it makes our expanded sections really poop out to the sides. Okay, so once that's in there, you're going to find your working yarn, tuck in that end. We don't even need to weave that in on this project, we'll just put it in the inside. So find the end that's still attached to your needle, and like before, we're going to gently but firmly pull on it to close up that top gather. And then when we've got it nice and closed, and it doesn't matter if there's still a little circle or a little gap in the middle, because we'll close that up in a minute, we're going to take our needle and we are going to just pop it underneath any of the stitches nearby, pull it through, keep it nice and tight so it can't slip away, and just pop it round that loop so that you make yourself a little knot. You see that, how it's twisted round? And then pull it gently shut. And it should be fairly secure. So what you should have now is a kind of round crocheted ball, which is wider in the middle than at the top, two little holes on the top and the bottom, and I still have a nice long tail of yarn attached to your needle. And what we're going to do now is make it look like a proper pumpkin by really accentuating each of these segments that you've put in here. To do that, I'm going to take our needle, push it through the centre top hole, all the way through, squash your pumpkin down, and hold on to it until you can feel it poking out of the other side of your pumpkin. And then pull that through. Put it all the way through. And now what you're going to do is pull that tight so that it brings your pumpkin top down into the centre of the pumpkin, and holding it firmly, find one of the grooves you made by making your back post double crochets and put your yarn into that groove, pulling it all the way along round to the top, and then with your needle, from top to bottom again, you're going to poke it back through at the bottom. It'll be a bit fiddly. Pull that through. And what you want to do is just make sure it's still sitting in the groove. And pull that nice and tight. And watch as it creates that pumpkin sort of balloon effect. Can you see that? How much neater that is? Okay, so we're holding this tight still, and once again, from the bottom, we're going to find a groove and pull it all the way around to the front, keeping it nice and tight, because what you don't want is to let that go and this one to pop back out again. So secure it with your thumb, take your needle, and again, push it from the top hole through to the bottom hole and pull it through. Pull that nice and tight, and there's your second little bump. That's cute. Right, okay, so next again we're going to just repeat that all the way around in each of these grooves that you've made, securing it with our thumb, pushing it from top to bottom. Pulling it tight, creating a little groove. Back to the back, find your groove, lay it in there, secure it with your thumb, push your needle from top to bottom. And this is why we wanted that really long tail, because you've got lots and lots of sewing to do here. Pull it nice and tight. Another one. So we've got one more to do here. Can you see the difference it makes? That lovely sort of accentuated shape instead of just this sort of light groove. So last time, we're going to take it round from the back to the front, secure it with our thumb, take our needle and push it through to the back. Pull that nice and tight. And there you have your pumpkin. So the next step for us is to close up these little gaps so that you can't see the stuffing. So the way I like to do that is keeping hold of this thread so it's nice and tight still. Take your needle and just put it underneath one of the posts on one of your poofs, one of the little bits that poof out, and pull it through. You're going to pull that tight, and it pulls that centre piece of your pumpkin into the centre of your pumpkin there. So then again, hold onto your string so it doesn't come loose. Find the next bump around, take a post, put your needle under it, pull it through. Tighten it in. And we're going to work around our pumpkin like that. All the while making sure that we keep tension on our thread to stop the pumpkin from coming undone. Last one. And can you see how that's just closed up the hole? Just by pulling those little bits in. So all we're going to do is take our needle now, push it through, right through to the bottom, out the other side, still holding on to our yarn to keep that nice and tensioned, pull it all the way through. And then we're going to repeat that on this side. So I'm going to stop the camera here and meet you back at the end of this bit, but all we're going to do is exactly the same as we just did, but for these ones, these little sides. So I'll see you in a moment when that is done. Okay, so I've just finished going all the way around each of my pumpkin bumps, and take my needle, it's time to tie this off. So I'm going to put it back under the first front post that I went under. It gets a bit fiddly at this point. I'm going to pull that almost all the way through. In fact, I'm going to pull it all the way through just to close it off. And then I'm going to put it back through the same loop, all the way, almost all the way through. So you end up with a little loop. I'm just going to put my needle back through that so it ties itself in a knot. I'm going to repeat that again. So I've got a loop, put my needle through it, pull it tight, and there you have it double knotted off. And then all I do usually is take my needle and push it through the pumpkin all the way back to the bottom, out anywhere, pull your yarn through, get my scissors, and then if you pull that tight and you're very careful, you carefully snip, it will disappear when you snipped it off. So you now have your completed pumpkin. And all that's left to do is to take your cinnamon stick, wiggle it into the centre, and proudly display your crocheted pumpkin anywhere in your home. Well done! You just crocheted a pumpkin.